Hello, everyone. Welcome to the LHC workshop on effective teamwork in large collaborations. The event is organized by the representatives of the early career science community in Atlas, ALICE, CMS, and LHCb experiments. My name is Shalu, and I'm from the Atlas experiment. On behalf of all the organizers of this event, I would like to welcome all the panelists and the participants. So this event has two sessions. First, we will start with the panel discussion, where we ask a set of questions to each of the panelists. And this will be followed by a short break, and we will reconvene the meeting after 10 minutes in 4 separate breakout rooms, where you can ask any questions to the panelists in a more private and informal setting. We have also received a lot of questions during registration. So we have over 100 registrants, but I'm not sure if all of them will make it today. Anyway, we will not be able to cover all of those questions. So if your specific question is not covered in the panel discussion, then please stick around and ask them during the breakout session. So without much delay, we can get started. First, I would like to ask the panelists to give a brief introduction of themselves, including all the positions or at least all the positions you hold right now or have held in the past. So let's get started and go in the alphabetical order, starting with Andrea.
Yes, I hope that you can hear me. So my name is Andrea Knue. I did my PhD at the University of Göttingen in Germany and then did a 3-year postdoc in Glasgow. After that, I worked for the Max Planck Institute in Munich. Following that, I went to the University of Freiburg, where I did my habilitation last year. And now I'm working for the University of Dortmund. And since last summer, I'm also the top working group convener in Atlas. And before being top working group convener, I was subgroup conveners for different things like top properties, top reconstruction, and top modeling.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. So then let's go to Dave.
Hello, I'm Dave Barney. I'm a bit older than most of the people here, I think. I've been on CMS for 30 years, roughly. That was after I did my degree and PhD originally in the UK at Imperial College in London on a different experiment. Since being on CMS, I'm an applied physicist, so I don't do any data analysis at all. I've been involved in calorimeters for a long time. I've led the pre-shower calorimeter of CMS and then the electromagnetic calorimeter of CMS. I now work on the upgrade of the end caps of CMS called the high granularity calorimeter. And I'm a group leader at CERN. So I've been a CERN employee now for nearly 30 years. So I lead a group of physicists, engineers, and technicians that are responsible for all of the CERN activities of CMS for operation and technical coordination and upgrades. So that's the main thing I do now. I'm also the scientific secretary of the CMS Collaboration Board. I work for a thing called Aero Forum, which joins together CERN, ESA, ESO, Eurofusion, and a few other things. So, and I've been education and outreach coordinator for CMS for a decade as well in the past, and a few other things.
Awesome. So now we'll go to Elena.
Hi, hello. So yeah, I did my PhD at NICEF in Amsterdam, where I worked on silicon detectors and analysis for the LHCb experiment. And then I continue still in the LHCb experiment also for my postdoc in the University of Dortmund, where I kept doing a little bit of both hardware and analysis, but I moved more towards operation, and in particular in luminosity, both from operation point of view in preparation of run 3 and new detectors. And since then, I covered the role of convener for the luminosity working group, and then I moved as a deputy operation coordination. And since this year, I'm in the run coordination for the LHCb experiment.
Great, thank you, Elena. We go to Johan next.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name is Johan Sebastian Bonilla Castro. Johan is just fine. My pronouns are they, them. At the moment, I'm a postdoc at University of California, Davis, working with the CMS experiment. There I do things in detectors. So I have, I'm Deputy Operations Manager for the CSCs, or their muon detector system in CMS. And I also have a hat in analysis where I'm a subgroup convener of the very heavy fermions of essentially just BSM, boosted BSM. I also do a lot of work with diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I had like a management position with the SNOMAS process, which is this American prioritization process, similar to the European Strategy Forum. And that was in particular with diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a bunch of papers came out of that. And the last thing that I'll mention is that I also spearheaded this effort for to include Costa Rica as an LHCb collaborator, which they've been since June of last year. So I also have some experience with, you know, building groups in areas where there traditionally haven't been HEP groups.
Great. Then next is Lais. I'm not sure if I pronounced the name correctly, but you can correct me.
Yeah, that's correct. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So hi everyone. Thank you very much for having me today. So my name is Lais, and I work for the LHCb experiments, both on analysis and detector development. I joined the collaboration some years ago as a PhD student in Brazil, and I did my first postdoc in Clermont-Ferrand in France until last year, and now I'm a postdoc at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland. So that's it.
Great. Max, next.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Max. I am currently a research scientist at Triumph in Vancouver, Canada. I did my PhD at Stanford University on the Atlas experiment. Then I was a postdoc at the Enrico Fermi Institute at the University of Chicago, also on the Atlas experiment, and now also still on the Atlas experiment. I was previously the JET-AT-MIS coordinator for the experiment, so did a lot of coordination there, as you could possibly imagine. And I'm currently the TDAC physics upgrade convener in Atlas. I've previously been subgroup convener of the various physics groups, so both in JET-AT-MIS and in, for example, strong production in SUSY. I also currently in physics, I work on Higgs pair production, which is a very large area, often has sort of analysis teams of 50 plus that I have to coordinate. So yeah, thanks, and excited to meet you all.
Oh, we're excited to have you. Thank you very much, Max. Next is Sami.
Hello, everyone. I think that I tell a little bit because my career has been scattered. So maybe I talk about that. I started in university in '95 and I had a very strong teacher's identity. I wanted to be a teacher, but then life happened and I defended 2005 on theoretical physics. And then was one of the very difficult decisions because I had the postdoc position in US. But then at the same time, my wife got the permanent position from our hometown and we had to choose. So we either had to be separated in 2 different continents and that we ruled out, or then we had to make a decision if my postdoc is more valuable than her permanent position. And then the decision was that we went with her permanent position and I left the academy. I completed then the teacher's pedagogical qualification in 2006 and went to a mathematics teacher in the University of Applied Sciences and started to teach math for engineers. And then I competed from this position, but then it turned out that it was applied by so many PhDs in mathematics that they decided that the physicist cannot beat mathematician in a mathematics position, and I found myself unemployed. And then I was trying to get to the Finnish Technical State Research Center to work, but then I ended up making a survey between university and this Technical State Research Center to how to increase the collaboration, and then this suddenly doing this job opened me a possibility to come back to the research, and I was asked that if a theoretician can become an experimentalist, and I came to the Alice experiment as a postdoc in 2008. But then I had very much difficulties to establish a career still. I don't have time to talk about it, but I was actively seeking good opportunities outside of the academic life, and went to a few interviews and was shortlisted a couple of times, but then nevertheless I continued here until I get then this adjunct professorship in 2019 and then get the permanent faculty position in 2020, so 15 years after the PhD. And currently I'm a team leader of Finland in Alice experiment, and then also I'm not at the moment in the Alice diversity office. So these kind of things has happened in my life very briefly. Thank you.
Thank you, Sami, for sharing that with us. Next, we go to Shreyasi.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks to the organizers for having me here. So yeah, I'm Shreyasi Acharya. I started my PhD in 2015, and I completed my PhD in 2021 from VECC in India. I did my PhD thesis on heavy flavor electron analysis with the Alice collaboration. And then I joined postdoc again in the Alice collaboration in the University of Clermont-Ferrand. There I started analyzing the run-3 data, and also since it's still ongoing and things are still evolving, I decided to shift to a run coordination. So currently I'm at CERN and I'm involved in the run coordination for the MFT detector in Alice, and I will be the next SRC for MFT from July. And I'm looking forward because we will have lots of data and let the data to see how it works. And it's always exciting to know and understand how the data is taken and it's being processed, because for like 5 or 6 years of my analysis, I had everything in my hand and I could analyze them. I didn't get to know the difficult process that is there before we get the, all calibrated and good data. So this is exciting and looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much to all the panelists for introducing themselves. So I'm going to get started with our questions. So considering that Sami has this long career experience where he has tried different things, we want to ask you the first question. So as a hiring person, as a hiring manager, how can you pitch a project and reach a mutual agreement on expectations at the point of hiring a candidate, for example, in terms of project plans and timeframes, etc.?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. And I have now experience in hiring postdocs and PhD students, then coming from the position. And then one of the things that I have been thinking about that how to balance then this kind of needs of the project and the needs of the individual, particularly in the academic recruitment. And this, I think, that needs quite a bit of a discussion that, for example, if I have a project now, funding for the project, and I need a person to fulfill the goals of the project. But on the same time, I would need to consider the person themselves in a way that they only a small fraction of people eventually make the long-term academic career. In Finland, that's maybe 10% of the graduates, 10 to 20% of the graduates will eventually have a permanent academic career. So then at the same time, you need to have enough opportunities to develop yourself in areas for the future jobs. And then there's also a pressure coming from the department that we need the teaching power and these kind of jobs. So then that needs lots and lots of open discussion that what are the goals of the person and what are the needs of the project. And I can only say that, in my opinion, the best way is the openness and discussions on what are the expectations for me, what is the expectation from me to the other person, and what is the hopes of the person themselves. I don't know if that answered the question, but
yeah, it's basically we need to have that openness. So when you're hiring somebody, a postdoc or a PhD student, all these expectations have to be openly discussed. Anybody else have anything to comment on this question? Okay, no, I guess so. I'm going to go with the next question. How to make sure that your work is original and how to give proper credit if you're building upon the work of others. So this is totally true in our large collaborations. There is also one more question. So equally, what should you do if you realize that your own work has not been properly credited? Max, do you want to answer this question?
Yeah, thanks. This is a very good, very difficult question. So certainly, okay, so there are 3 parts here. So I'm looking at the text to make sure I get them all. So how to make sure your work is original. I mean, obviously that's very difficult. We all sort of step on the shoulders of giants in these experiments, especially those of us, you know, who were in elementary school when the Atlas was proposed or CMS were proposed and things like that. So certainly, you know, to some extent, our work is always derived, and we give credit to people who have been building it for a long time. To make sure your work is original, though, I would say, you know, come at it with try to come at questions with a fresh perspective, and to not just follow and repeat analysis or ideas that have been done before. Try to come at, you know, when you're doing a new round of an analysis, try to, you know, understand, okay, what's the limiting feature this time? What new ideas can we bring that fundamentally change the background estimate, that fundamentally change the sort of core of the analysis? And you know, things like that. I mean, if there's a good reason that something is fixed, then you shouldn't mess with it. Okay, sometimes you just have to accept that and cite, and it's not going to be so original. But look for opportunities in situations where things are limiting, where things aren't working. What was your frustration last time with your analysis? What uncertainty was too large and limited your sensitivity? Understand that and tackle it yourself. You know, take the initiative. Don't just accept that a method is how it's always been done. Understand it and beat it. Okay, so that's my maybe first piece of advice there. Give credit when you're building upon the work of others. I would say in this case, in our field, it is always best to just give credit as much as possible and to acknowledge and carefully, thoughtfully acknowledge the relationship of your work to others. And that does mean that if you're, you know, going to conferences and you see an idea from somebody else from a different experiment, then you should cite it. So, you know, we came up with a nice background estimate technique in Atlas for an experiment, for an analysis I was doing. But it turns out it was actually a LHCb idea originally. And so we definitely actually wanted to cite LHCb and the original LHCb single author paper as well on that. And so we always made sure to put that into the paper, and hopefully that was useful to that person. So I would say, yeah, in general, it does not hurt you to be generous in your citations, and that does not hurt you to be generous in giving credit. I think most people are very open to the fact that this is a collaborative field, and understand that when you share credit, you're doing the right thing. There are very few purely individual contributions in the field, and it's fine to just say that and to acknowledge as much as possible. Okay, and then realize your own work has not been properly credited. I mean, here, this is difficult, extremely subtle, extremely difficult. sometimes if it's something as simple as plagiarism, my slides have been taken without permission, for example, that's a very simple thing. But if my slide gets clipped and I spent a lot of time on that slide, I'm not super happy if somebody is then showing it without my name on it. So I will email them and say, I don't find this great. Could you please consider citing me if you're using my somewhat unique presentation of this. If it's something super common, okay, it doesn't matter because we all respin it. But that's in a situation where I felt I had some original contribution to the presentation of some material. So in that case, I felt sort of fine to go and directly talk to people about it. At the same time, sometimes we have to also acknowledge, how do I put it? Even if we feel that something is directly ours, there are other interpretations that are also possible. So, you should look within and ask how much of this is really mine, how much of it is something that the other person from their perspective can see as theirs, and they because they also contributed to it in some way. So consider within a little bit, and don't just, there's an instinct we sometimes have to be protective and to sort of jump and say, oh, well, somebody did something rude to me and I'm going to fight back. I would say, to calm down, take a breath, ask yourself from their perspective, what does it look like? If it still seems to you not right, then I think often people are quite open to being corrected, and to add a citation or to add something to their slide that indicates or something like that, or in general. So people are, I think, usually quite open to this. I can't say that all the time it's appropriate to try to have this conversation directly. I think most of the time that's just going to be the easiest way, at least having the conversation and trying to establish for the future what you see as the proper demarcation of credit at that point. It's better to just have that conversation, even though it's awkward, rather than let it stew and sort of prevent collaboration in the future. Okay, so I think I've gone on long enough, but I also hope I've answered the question. Right,
you answered it and covered all the points. Thank you. Yeah, so anyone else wants to comment on it?
I would like to make a brief comment, because what I've seen now as a top convener is sometimes things, for example, if you have a theory paper that was not quoted by a collaboration, it's totally normal to contact the collaboration and say, well, we think we did this calculation first, or this is an important calculation, so please cite it in our paper. And I think that should be the same across collaborations. If we are using a method that maybe Alice has developed, but the person who wrote the paper doesn't know about it because it was before their time or whatever, it's perfectly fine to say, well, we did this first, please, could you please cite us as well? And they never say no. I mean, there's no reason why you would say, oh, no, I don't want to do this, right? So as long as it's something really original, I mean, obviously, if it's some kind of machine learning study that has been done 10 times in a different way, maybe that's not suitable, but if it's really some original work, we would always include it as a citation.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Andrea. So next question is to Dave. So the question is how to gain visibility as an individual in a large team, and do you have any advice on the ways to gain visibility for your work once it is finished?
So we could spend hours talking on this topic, of course. Gaining visibility in some of the big collaborations is obviously quite difficult, but it's not impossible. It all starts, to me at least, with initiative. When you show initiative and you go out of your way to do something, you immediately gain recognition. So I'll give you concrete examples. So we ran beam tests for a prototype experiment a few years ago. And one of our young PhD students sort of just came to us and said, can we do this, incorporate these beam chambers into the DAQ? And we said, well, we haven't done that. We don't know how to do it. And he just said, well, I'll do it then. I'll take care of this. And we said, well, do you know how to do it? No, I have no idea. I'll figure it out. He went away, he figured it out. He did an absolutely brilliant job. He ended up winning a thesis award at CMS for one of the best PhDs we've ever seen. And it was really the attitude that he had. It wasn't the technical expertise that he had at the beginning. It was that willingness to go the extra mile, to get involved, to do what was necessary, communicate everything, and just try. And so not be told all the time what to do. We've got plenty of people who can do that, but the ones who stand out are the ones who really take the initiative to go a bit further. And so gaining recognition through that sort of way of working, that way of approaching a problem, that way of interacting with people, of how can I help, immediately endears you to everyone, because everyone's busy and everyone's got too much to do. So when someone comes up and says, oh, I could do that, and they do, you have to follow through. You can't just say, yeah, I can do that, and then you don't follow through and it's a disaster. It has to actually work. It's a very simple way to gain recognition, because then people look at you and people ask you to do more and give you more responsibility and see what you can take on. They test you more. And it's those people that you really want to keep.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. I think it's very clear what you said about like gaining that visibility in this huge collaboration like ours, where everyone is interested to do everything, but there is that one extra piece of standing out through that taking initiative. It's great. Thank you. Sami has raised his hand.
Very much in a similar lines, but thinking about, for example, in a PWGs, that once you go to a conferences, there's a competition of talks, and quite often the conferences are combining abstracts, and you have to combine the topics. So then you need to select a speaker that speaks on behalf of many, and then it can happen that some PhD students never get a big conference talk during the PhD. But then if you want to enable your position, then in a PWG, you can regularly present small steps, but present regularly and be up. And then also sometimes when, for example, I have been in internal review committees or analysis review committees, that there's a situation where a person kind of disappears. It takes a long time and we don't hear anything. And then the person pops up again, then after a long period of silence, then that is obviously not good. So like David said, that communicate with people, your PWG conveners and leaders, and such that it's know that how you are doing, that even if there is an occasion that you cannot contribute at the moment, that there's something else that you just need to do, but it's important that it wouldn't be a surprise.
Okay, sounds good. So by PWG, you mean physics working group? Is that, yeah, okay, good, thanks. So there are quite, I guess Andrea and Dave both raised their hands. I think I saw Andrea's hands first. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, cool. Andrea, do you want to go?
Yes, just one more comment. I think it's also important so that the analysis contacts or whatever it is called in your collaboration are aware of what you're working on. So what they said before, that that you communicate with them, but also that the analysis contacts make sure that these talks are equally distributed. Sometimes they think, oh, this person is shy, they probably don't want to give the presentation, or their English is not so great, let's take someone who is a native speaker. And I think you really have to make sure that this doesn't happen, because obviously if you always ask the people who already have good English, how should the others improve, right? So I think it's also important to signal then to your analysis contact, no, I'm really interested to give the talk, but I would probably not fight for it if you ask in a meeting, ask like, oh, who wants to give the talk? Maybe the person would not say, I will. So it's always important to make sure that these people are not forgotten.
Okay, great. Thank you, Andrea. Dave, you want to add something?
Yeah, just a quick comment building on what Sami and Andrea just said about presentations. I think this is another way to stand out, is know how to give a presentation and make an effort with making a presentation. We all know what makes a bad presentation. You could list them off on your whiteboard or blackboard or a bit of paper in front of you, and you all know what makes you go, oh, I think I'll do something else. I'll look at some cat videos on YouTube or whatever. You know what is bad. So don't follow the same mistakes as those bad presentations. Make your presentations stand out. Make sure you focus on the right messages to give to people, not a ton of data and a ton of information. Focus on what you want the people to take away from your talk. By summarizing your work accurately and focusing in the right places, that's another good way of getting the recognition that you want, because people will say, oh, this person not only shows initiative and knows how to do things technically, but can present their work and get others on board. And maybe others will look at that and go, yeah, this is the sort of person I want in my team as well. Very important part.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point. So we do give a lot of these presentations on a day-to-day basis. So if you put some extra effort in making them look nice and also present nice, easy way to gain visibility.
So I'll just argue with you there, because looking nice doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Making the messages that you want to give very clear and people to take home those key few points that you have, that's the key thing. It's really key. We do a tutorial inside CMS, an interactive tutorial, which we could propose at one point for people to learn how to make more engaging presentations. So we could propose it to this group at one point, if you like.
Yeah, that would be great. Yes, if you can send a link, we can put it in the agenda for this.
Sure. I'll contact you.
Great, thank you very much. Because we have been on this question for quite some time, is it okay if we go to the next question? And yeah, great, awesome. Okay, so the next question is to Shreyasi. How can you join an existing project if you would like to contribute to the work being currently carried out?
Okay, yeah, so according to my experience, so first, I think what I would do is I would review all of the work that has been done and is ongoing. I would look at the people who are doing the work. For example, when I joined my postdoc, like 1.5 years ago, the development in the codes and the systems were ongoing and was still in process. So there I started looking at what people were doing and who to contact. And the first thing that I did was, or I would do if I were to join, is to contact the PWG conveners, who are the physics working group conveners, because they know overall what is going on, and have a proposal that, okay, I see that these things are done. I feel that these things are required to be done. And if you could also let me know if there are things which you need manpower in. And I would be interested in doing this, because at least at this point, I feel like the collaborations are very structured. in a way that you have like the conveners and the PWG groups and the PAG groups. So having information and letting the leaders know that you are willing to work will give people, some structured projects, because they know, okay, we need manpower in this particular thing. Would you be interested in doing this? People can suggest that, okay, this is very important at this point. So the thing that in fact, even I asked people around when I came last year for the run coordination, and I asked them what is the thing that is most, important right now. And this is how I kind of coordinated what I would be like, what I'm doing right now. So yeah, this is what I did and is my way to go.
Thank you. So basically contact the people in charge, get to know what is currently existing, and then see where you need the person power.
Yes, just getting the expert's opinion.
Great, awesome. Anyone want to add to that? Okay, I guess that's the best way to go. So very good. So next question is to Johan. As an early career researcher, when and how should you ask for help, and to whom? So sometimes help can be for technical or for career related. So that is part one of the question. And second part is, what are the roles of a convener and what should an early career researcher contact them for? Shreyasi covered one area where you can contact them for when it comes to how to join an existing project, but in general, at what stage and for what an early career scientist can contact a convener?
Sure. Yeah, so I'll take that in parts as well. So first, I'll talk about asking for help in general before asking like a convener in particular. So I didn't mention this actually in my introduction, but I did my PhD with Atlas, and then I transitioned to CMS for my postdoc. And one of the kind of general pieces of advice my PhD advisor gave me was, this is a good opportunity for you to ask all the dumb questions again, which it's kind of true, because there's so many software like uniquenesses to all our experiments that are so inherent to them, and at some point become second nature sometimes to folks that have been in them for so long. But that might not be the case, right? You might be switching analyses. You might be, there might be some new tool that you haven't been working with that's becoming more popular. This happens all the time, but we tend to be afraid of asking for help. And I asked for help a lot, right? And with this kind of excuse in mind of like, oh, I've switched experiments, so it's okay, I don't know. But then I kept asking for help, because it's kind of, I don't know, to me, it's kind of normal for you to not know everything. So as kind of connecting back to some of the other questions before about like, plagiarism or originality, like we are where we are, right? There has been work before us. You are where you are. You don't know everything. Just be honest. And the more honest you are with, where you are, what kind of tools you're using, because you're new to the situation or something, it's okay to ask for help is my point. Then kind of putting the convener hat on. I wish folks would talk to me more. Usually the role of a convener is to manage, and just to make sure that people who are trying to aim for particular conferences and those analyses actually get done. So a lot of it is kind of pushing people to present. But it was mentioned a couple comments ago, to present often. The working group meeting should be for working. It shouldn't be for like, all right, my analysis is done. That's the only time you should present. Again, just be honest. I'm stuck on this for a week or 2 weeks. Who knows? Maybe someone else has figured that out. So anyway, just be more open, regardless of what, your seniority in the collaboration or in a particular system. Just be honest. So yeah, I'd say anyway, I think it's always a good time. It's better to get in contact early as well, because sometimes there might be bigger plans happening that maybe not everyone might know, or maybe you missed a meeting or something. So it's good just whenever you have a general idea, like, hey, I'm trying to think about So I guess this is for more senior people. Like I have a student who is looking for a project. You should contact the conveners pretty directly, because they probably already have a set of tasks. Maybe it might not be updated in the latest Twiki or whatever it is, but the conveners are usually who have the pulse on that group. And whenever there's more help coming in, that'd be a really good time to do it. Or if you yourself are looking for a new, something new to do, they might tell you, this is what needs help, or this is what would be ideal to do, but we don't have the people for, or things like this. I think it's always a good idea to talk to them. And I don't know, we're not scary. We don't bite. We all work together, and honestly, we're not that much more advanced than anyone else. So just don't be afraid to ask.
So great. So conveners are not scary people. So we should be able to come to you more often and ask for help. Awesome. Thank you very much, Johan. Dave has his hand raised.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything Johan just said. I'd like to add something. People often need help, not only in technical aspects. They may require advice on dealing with a colleague or dealing with the convener. Maybe the convener is not as nice as Johan is, but maybe it's someone that they have a conflict with. And I know we may touch on conflicts later. So when you're looking for help, there is help available from many different places. So the first thing is to know who to ask for help. I totally agree with what was said, that you should not hesitate. If you have a problem, technical, behavioral, conflictual, whatever, don't hesitate. Figure out who you should be talking to and go and talk to them. So there is, help within your institute. So your supervisor, the group leader at your institute, and so on. But then there's also help outside of your institute as well, because you may have an issue with the institute. So within the collaborations, there's always the collaboration board chair, the spokesperson team. They're actually more approachable than you may think. And they listen to you and will know how to help. So whatever it is that you have an issue with, don't be afraid. Don't bottle it up. Go and seek the help you need, and you will get it. So it's not only the conveners that are friendly and approachable. All levels of management are, right up to the top. They're all approachable. There is support. There are support mechanisms in place, so use them. Take advantage of them.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, we should not be scared to ask for help. I guess that need to be something that is normal, asking for help. Yeah, so Shreyasi, you want to add something?
Yes, I just wanted to add to Dave's reply, and I completely agree with what he has said, and also from personal experience, actually, where it has happened that my views with some conveners did not agree and the work was not going well or things like that. And it did help when I approached other people from the institute and other team members, and that really helped me, because maybe they were facing similar issues with working with some kind of person. I mean, not necessarily that the person is bad, but it may be that some people have similar issues, and then we figure it out. And this has happened not only once, but actually more than once. And I would, initially when I was just starting out in my PhD, it was, I would say it was scary to confront and to step up, because I was not used to the collaboration structure. But as I moved on, I realized that it is always possible to talk to people, and if multiple people don't listen to you, you will have more people, because this is a large collaboration, and sometimes the situations are very tricky to handle at certain level. We can always go at a higher level to address the problems. So I think that's possible. It's for us to, have the courage to do it. Yeah, I learned this as I.
Well, yeah, that's very good to know, and for us to know that early. Thank you very much. So next question is to, Elena, you had something to ask or?
Yeah, no, I just completely agree with everything that everyone else said. I just wanted to add on top of everything that typically the older people know what you went through already. So many issues are common, issues like changing postdoc, changing cities, changing, interacting with people, typically something that we all went through as PhD or as young postdoc and so on. So it's just slightly older, hopefully wiser people that we can ask, you can easily ask questions to. So.
Thank you. So we also have the next question for you. Do you have any advice on time management, both as an individual and for the team as a whole, and setting deadlines?
Right. So time management, this is always a difficult one because typically, at least for me, has always been difficult to say no to people and to have usually a lot of stuff to do. So the first thing that actually my supervisor told me when I started a PhD, like day one, was like, you have to learn to say no because people will just ask, and you have to learn. Otherwise, you will be like overloaded with things. Like more in detail on time management is, I think the most important thing is really to understand priorities. So not everything is urgent. We see it especially now that you're going through the commissioning, right? Some things are really urgent, they need to be done yesterday. Other things, they might feel urgent for other people, but you need to realize what is more important in the big scheme of things. And obviously say, okay, I'm apologize if you're not able to do something in the time you're supposed to, and say, look, it will take me 2 days longer. I'm sorry, but really there is this other important thing that came up and proceed in this way. So I think that really the first thing is understanding priorities and be clear to the people you're working with on what the priorities are and for what reason. And be also clear with yourself that if you're not able to handle something, tell it, like not let people hang forever. Say that the situation changed, you're not able to do something anymore, try to find a solution together. That's as an individual, let's say. As a team leader, also the first part, I think more or less is the same, understand priorities, but also in this sense, I think it's very important to learn how to parallelize, understand what are the people that are in your team and what are their capabilities or their interests and what they can do. Because even if something is not a priority, but you have the perfect person that can do this, parallelize. Priority is someone else, this other person will take care of that. And then you have to set deadlines. I mean, but also in this case, deadlines should be realistic and achievable, not something that just puts stress on people for no reason. It should be something that can be achieved. It should be communicated well in advance. I understand that not always this is possible, but when possible, this is something to do. But also I think it's very important to have like some sort of checkpoints to monitor the progress. It's not that you decide, oh, this is the deadline and abandon the people to themselves, but also say, okay, this is the final goal, this is the deadline, is in 3 weeks, a month from now. Let's check on a weekly basis, for example, where you're standing, and if you need help, if you need support, and so on. And on top of everything, I think I've learned that you need to have a contingency plan when you have deadlines and backups, especially if you have the works that depends not only on your team specifically, but on other groups as well. Something can happen that you didn't expect. You have to have a lot of contingency and multiple backup plans on the table.
Oh, awesome. So basically the key to time management and setting priorities is first is to say no and figure out what is your priority and what you can do, and having realistic deadlines and not something super optimistic, I guess. Okay, so Dave, you raised your hand.
Yes, sorry, I'm talking a lot, but hopefully
okay, that's nice.
useful. Just to add to what Elena just said about, and what you said earlier about, people often think they have too much to do, and there's lots of tools that you can use to try to help you with your own time management. The most simple one that I know of, I drew on a bit of paper, which I'll struggle to get in the right place, is a very, very simple set of 4 squares, okay, where one of them says urgent, important, not urgent, important, urgent, not important, and not urgent, not important. And it's a very interesting exercise for a few days or maybe a week to just note down the things that you do during that week and where they fit in those boxes. And most people, if you ask them before they start this exercise, where they think they spend most of their time, they'll predominantly say, well, in the top part, of course, in the parts that say important. And, you know, one of the things that Elena said was, you know, they might be important to someone else, but they might not be actually something you should be doing, in which case they should be down here somewhere. And most people completely underestimate the amount of time they spend on things that are either not important and not urgent, or even worse, they are urgent, but they're absolutely not important. So why are you spending time on things? It's an interesting way of starting to understand what you spend your time on. There are many other tools out there, of course.
But yes, this is a very easy and a great tool to start with urgent, important, and then go to urgent, and important, not urgent.
Well, exactly. That's where you want to be. You want to be doing things that are always important, but they're not urgent. So you don't get stressed.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, great answer. Thank you very much. So next question is to Lais. Do you have any advice on how to account for cultural differences in terms of communication?
Yes. So for me, observe and try to understand the behavior and the way that people communicate without judging or take things personally has been very effective. For example, I'm from a culture which people tend to communicate in an indirect way. So we barely say no or strongly disagree about something. It's considered a bit rude. But I know in many cultures, especially in Europe, people communicate in a very direct way. So there are no issues about saying no. So at the beginning, working at CERN, like asking for help and hearing a straightaway no would sound a bit rude for me. But with time, I understood that people were not rude. It was just a different way of communicating. And I think, yeah, just finding ways to deal with their differences and understand that, yeah, people communicate in a different way, I think can be very useful. Yeah, that's it. So that's what I want to say.
Thank you very much. Yes, that makes actually a lot of sense to first observe and see where that person probably is coming from, and yeah, have some grace on other person too, I guess. Anyone has anything to add to that?
Yeah, these are things that it's very hard to prepare for, but there are, I guess that many of us in a big experiments have encountered these kind of situations. Like I remember one funny story. There were 2 persons from a different culture, and then we were proposing an assignment, and then it didn't work out. Nothing happened, and we didn't understand why. Then we repeated the request to do something, but again nothing happened. And then we asked that, okay, so what is now going on? That why things doesn't happen? And then eventually it turned out that we were asking, for certain reasons, a younger person to advise older one. And in this culture, it was considered impossible. But we didn't have any idea, not anything. We didn't expect that to happen, but it did. So then maybe a good thing is just to try to remind ourselves that whenever we encounter something unexpected, then the reason that we guess first might not be the correct one.
Yeah, so we need to allow some time and observe, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, and also I guess dig into the reasons to find out what really happened. Johan?
Yeah, again, so I'll follow up on Sami's comment on kind of working with folks of different cultures, right? We're a special kind of academic that works across the globe all the time, right? With all sorts of cultures being present either online or in person, and we're all trying to achieve the same thing. And you know, there could be a lot of misunderstandings that can happen, and at the end of the day, most people tend to be pretty well intentioned, but the execution might be a little different, right? And this is where the culture boundaries are very evident. And my point in this is to have a bit of leniency on this and to try to see through the message that the person is trying to say. This is especially true to I think myself as being born and raised and educated in the American system, where the way that we speak and the way that we interact for the most part on certain meetings or how things operate is pretty close to our culture. So the jump isn't that hard. But that's not true for other folks around the globe. And then we also have folks being, that come from other places and are, in different universities. So anyway, point is that we're exchanging things all the time. We're exchanging our culture all the time. And we just need to be aware of that. And that we have many different kinds of paths that are leading to, us operating the detector on any given day. So just remember, what the goal is and what the real intentions behind folks are. And it's just it'll go a long way to be lenient in that sense.
Yeah, that is a very good point. Thank you very much, Johan. So next question is to Andrea. What are the best ways for recognizing positive contributions within a team? Also the opposite, basically how to deal with conflict management.
Yes, so yeah, one of the points is obviously if you have an analysis team, let's say, and often we have still quite big analysis teams, it's important that everyone has a chance to make a contribution in the first place. And so you have to make sure that even if in the analysis team meetings, some people present more often than the others, that, for example, if you present this in a subgroup meeting, that everyone has a chance to present it and feels part of the team. And then it's always important to give direct feedback. So if someone gave a great talk, you should always tell the person that it was a great talk, even if they might be still unhappy with that. I've encountered a lot of students who say, oh no, I could have done it so much better. Sure, you can always improve something, but I think it's important that they get the direct feedback that you're happy with what they did. And then if you're, for example, we just had a workshop in our top group last week. It's always important to introduce people to each other and then also say what their contribution is, right? So if you have a student who is the first time at this workshop, you could say, oh, this is person XYZ, and they are working on this topic and it's super interesting, and make sure that they get already some more visibility within the group, because that will also help them for later. And then in general, I don't know how it works in other experiments. In Atlas, it's like that. We have some kind of point system. Sounds a bit weird, but yes. And if a student, for example, made a really good contribution, they get a better grade, so to speak, which makes it more likely for them to get a talk. And we always have to make sure that this is done in a fair way. There might be a lot of people who are doing a lot of work, but are a little bit more shy. They don't promote themselves that much. And it's always important that they are also getting recognized, because otherwise it's just like, oh, I know this person, they are doing a great job. Let's give them the best grade or points. And the other point is to nominate people for talks, posters, and also for awards. right? If you know a person has done a great job, why not nominate them for your experiment award, or ask them, are you interested in giving a poster at this conference? It would be nice. And this way they also feel a little bit more appreciated. Then in terms of conflict, yeah, that is more tricky. We've already touched this a little bit. So if there is some kind of harassment, you always have to get, I would always get first a little bit more expertise from, for example, the ombudsperson at CERN, what to do, right? There are situations where it's not enough to hear both sides or trying to bring two people in the same room and discuss it. There you really want first to figure out what's really going on and get a little bit more help from outside. But in other situations, for example, if an analysis is stalled because some people are not talking to each other anymore, often this is really just miscommunication. People don't know what is expected of them, or information is not propagated through. For example, let's say we have an analysis contact, and the analysis contact talks to the subgroup conveners and the conveners. And the conveners are maybe super excited. They want this result out for a certain conference. So they say, oh, can you make it to this conference? And then the analysis contact might be still quite young and does not say how to say that this is not realistic. So they say, yeah, sure, we'll try, right? So then the pressure gets put on the analysis team to provide this information, but sometimes the information doesn't even make it to the analysis team in time for them to plan it, right? So this should always be some kind of bottom-up approach. The team should always decide what they think is possible. This should be communicated, and then you can see if you can make the timeline. Because I think the most thing that I've learned in the last couple of years is you never know what's going on in people's lives, right? They might be struggling with mental health. They might have other problems. They might have an insane teaching load at their university, so they can't dedicate 50% of their time to the specific task. And so you should always assume, if you don't get something from someone who you've given a task, that this is not malicious, that there are some reasons why this is happening. And you just don't know the full picture, and then maybe try to figure out what timeline would be more realistic, so to speak. I think it's really often just people having very different expectations, and these expectations are not communicated properly. But as I said before, if there's something much more serious going on, then obviously you have to talk to someone who has more experience in this situation, and then trying to solve the conflict. But most things are really happening because someone has an expectation, didn't even communicate it, or thought communicated it because they communicated to the conveners, but not to the people in their analysis team, and then everyone is stuck. And it's also, you have to make sure that people know that they can say no, right? It's never acceptable if someone asks you on a Friday afternoon to have a result for Monday morning, right? I mean, that's it. I know it happens a lot. And in some situations, when it's really, really urgent, when there is an important bug or whatever, you might do it for one weekend. But in general, this is not an acceptable behavior. And you need to let everyone know that if they say that you get the right answer. You shouldn't get the answer to the question. So if you ask a question, you shouldn't expect that the answer is yes. They need to know that they should give a realistic answer, and then everyone has a more realistic impression of what needs to be done and of the timescale, and then everyone is a little bit less frustrated. And I think that really helps in terms of management, because if people have no rest, if you're always chasing the next deadline, in the end, everyone is frustrated, and you might introduce bugs and nothing gets done, right? So it's much better really to give people the time to do this in their own time, to see what needs to be done. And don't forget that you're actually talking to people that have their own additional work apart from Atlas. No one of us is working 100% on Atlas. Or let's say maybe it's a tiny fraction of the people who can really dedicate it the full time to the experiment. Everyone else has much more responsibilities elsewhere that are also important.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Andrea. You touched a lot of points and it was very useful. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have 3 panelists who have raised their hands. I don't think we can go through all of you, but maybe I do not know really who raised their hand first. But
Sami raised his hand first.
Okay. Yeah, Sami, do you want to go ahead?
Okay, so I try to be brief. in case you think that you are in serious conflict, take notes. So that's one of the things that first of all, taking notes and thinking about it may give you time to have a perspective. And then hopefully the situation is miscommunication. But if it's not, then the notes are needed when the situation is really went through, because then people start to ask details. And it sometimes can be very rough, but with the notes, you are in a better position.
Thank you.
Yes, I fully agree. Write down what happened on which time, which day, so that also you don't forget something later. If it really gets more serious, that you can really pinpoint the way that things happened.
Yeah, makes sense. Dave, the next question is for you. So I'm going to go with Elena, if that's okay.
That's fine. My comment is very, very quick as well anyway. So
Okay, great.
for Elena first.
Sure. No, I just wanted to add a quick comment on more like we talked more about personal conflicts, but sometimes you really have to deal with the conflict between different groups with the people you're coordinating. And in that case, is a different situation in the sense that typically it's a technical conflict on I would use this time to do this, and the other group would like to use the time for do something else. And in that case, I think that yes, you can. The first thing to do is try to understand what the reason for a particular request from either side. If you cannot find a compromise between the different activities, at some point you really need to do it. Like as a coordinator, you really need to do a judgment call. So at some point, I just wanted to say that at some point the coordinators are not just there to mediate, but they're there to really coordinate. And you really need to say, well, what is the best for in the big scheme of things of the project at end, and say, well, I have to make a judgment call. I would say, let's go with this activity. And that's okay to make someone unhappy, because sometimes happens. Unfortunately, especially in case of conflicts, that's the case.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Dave, do you want to chip in?
Yeah, but just very quickly, it builds on what others have said. And again, it comes back to what we said earlier. If you have a problem, tell someone about it, communicate with them. And, not everybody is trained to deal with conflict. Most young researchers don't come across it very often. So then it may be very unusual for you to actually have a conflict and know what to do in those circumstances. So know who to talk to, know that you will be listened to, and don't keep it inside you. Don't keep it bottled up. If you have a problem, there are lots and lots of people around to help. That's the bottom line. So go and get the help that you need. And people are trained. There are lots of people trained to know how to deal with conflictual situations of all sorts. And some of them can be really, really horrible. In private, I can tell you some that I've had to deal with. But you learn how to deal with it and you get trained for it. And so don't be afraid to ask for help. Similar thing to what was said earlier.
Great. Thanks, Dave. So the next question is also for you. How is best to delegate tasks and to maximize the strengths of individual team members and keep them motivated? So motivation is the key here.
Yeah, this is a very difficult one. With delegation, the first step to delegation is knowing that if you delegate a task to someone else, it will likely take longer than if you do it. And the first step is to accept that and know that it's fine, it's okay. It will take longer because that other person may not know what to do. So you will have to spend time with them, training and supporting them. But in the end, that other person will know what to do and will be, productive. So the first step is trust. So trust the person that they will be able to do what you want them to do, and let them try to deal with it. It's it's not easy to delegate tasks. It's not easy to know when to delegate. If you can do it, if you trust people and you see that they show signs that they can handle it, it's a very useful skill to have. So go for it, knowing that you are letting yourself in for more work than normal. Now, maximizing strengths. So this is kind of who to delegate to in a way. So know your team. So know if you're in any sort of convenership, coordination role, leadership, management, try to get to know your team. Not only the technical skills that they have, which is what people generally focus on, is technically, can this person do that? The behavioral skills of people are equally important. There are lots and lots of really clever people out there that I'm sure you've come across, all of you here have come across, that you would never want to work with. So know what the behavioral abilities and limitations of your team members are as well. Them they fit into a team? Can they lead this other team? Can they push things forwards? Can they work with different cultures? If not, help them understand, because it's not all technical what we do, even though people from the outside world tend to think of us as white-coated, bearded, white males. Oh, well, I don't have a white coat, but I'm a slightly bearded white male. But, there's a lot in the behavioral aspect. So build on that, maximize that as well. And watch people, watch how they behave, watch how they lead, see when they need help, communicate with them all the time, and ask, specifically, how's this going? How's the work going? How's the interactions with X person or X group, whatever it may be? Communicate with them on a regular basis, and over time that regular basis will change. It will either become more frequent, in which case there's probably a problem that you need to deal with, or less frequent when they start walking on their own. So watch, communicate. I think communicate has come up in virtually every answer that we've had to every question. It's the key part of all of this. I will take the opportunity while I have the floor to say, this thing we're doing today is billed as a soft skills forum or discussion. And I already disagreed with Antra about calling it soft skills. These are very hard skills. Dealing with people, dealing with emotions, they're the hardest skills. Technical's easy. This is really hard.
Okay, so there is also one more part, how to keep the team members motivated.
So I deliberately didn't answer that because we kind of touched upon sort of focusing on positives and rewarding people in ways that you can do, through awards, through giving them talks, through encouraging them just verbally, just saying, you've done a really good job. Don't be afraid to do that. It's surprising how few people ever get told that they do a good job. And even the people who say, oh, I don't need to be told I've done a good job, I just know I've done a good job. Even those people occasionally like to hear, oh, that's really good. Thanks for that. So encouragement, again, comes back to communication. Tell people the truth. Try not to focus on negatives. There are tools for that as well. Some of you may have heard of the bad news formula. And if you haven't, you should look it up. It's quite an interesting way to tell people that they've done something really bad, but then turn it around to focus on positive things. It's an interesting way to keep people motivated. But I think we've touched upon motivation earlier as well.
We'll be sure to check out Bad News Formula. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are running out of time. So I want to ask one last question to Max. Max, if you can make it short, that would be nice. The question is how to know when a project is complete. Basically, we don't want to work on it forever. So when do we know that a project is done?
Right. So here, I mean, this is many layers, many difficulties. I'll say maybe two considerations. First is the phrase I think that I always keep in mind is perfect is the enemy of good. You will never have perfect if you don't, if you keep striving towards that. Good is often, good enough is the point. And we have the curiosity and the drive to solve the little problems and make things a little better and understand things a tiny bit fractionally. But you always, I think, need to be very much asking yourself as you're working on a project, as you're finishing it, going towards completion, is that extra week worth the percent? Is it worth the things like that? Because perfection, the drive for perfection can lead to disaster. So certainly I would say that that's really, really, really important for analysis, where there's always another iteration as well to come, right? If you don't get everything you wanted in this version of the paper, there's quite likely more data coming and you'll be able to do that down the line. So there, I think it's especially important to be pragmatic and not to focus on perfection in that case. In hardware, this becomes more difficult, right? Because when a detector is built, the detector is built and it is going down there. And if there's a compromise, then you've compromised. On the other hand, cancellation is a very real possibility, right? I mean, people have done that before, right? Where they refused to compromise, they went for something perfect, and ultimately the whole project imploded because it's the pursuit of something 5 or 10% better was prioritized, and you didn't get the 95% or 90% that would have been just as potentially better existing than not. That's harder, and it's a difficult area to make decisions on, but I do think that it's still important to ultimately keep that phrase in mind and orient your work towards that, and really be aware of at the point where you're at diminishing returns. If you're at the point where your additional week of work or weeks or months of effort are not as productive as they were in the past, then it's really worth considering wrapping it up. Okay, I'm wrapping it up.
Oh, thank you. Actually, that's a very good point. I mean, in fact, perfect is the enemy of good is something my supervisor used to tell me all the time when I was doing my PhD. So like when I was failing to converge and working on certain things forever, so she used to tell me like, no, you got to stop and this is good. Great. Thank you very much, everyone, for all these great answers. So we have one last question that we want to ask to you. So anyone can take this question. What is the main thing you have learned in your career for how to effectively work in or manage a team? You have covered various aspects of it. So this is more like a personal question, what you have learned in your career. Andrea.
Yeah, I think the most important point is that when you think you told everyone clearly what you want to do, you probably didn't. Normally you think like, oh, but I said we want to do X, Y, Z, and this is our goal. But half of the people, you might have used acronyms that some people don't know. You might talked about the methods and some people don't know. So you really have to be much more precise with what you want to do, when you want to do it, and how to break this down in smaller tasks. Often you're just talking about above everyone's head, and then you're confused why nothing is going on. So it's often we are not as clear as we think we are.
Oh, that's actually good to know. Yeah, I think we have, yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. We need to be very clear of what we're conveying and be realistic about the blind spots that we might have ourselves. Sami.
You never get rid of uncertainty. and that sort of applies to everything. And then you just have to sit down and see your feelings also, that your motivations, and then when I made this very difficult decision that I turned down the postdoc, and I thought that this would end my scientific career, then I was having a conversation with my supervisor at the time, and then he didn't tell me what to do, but he said that, look, you don't have a crystal ball, I don't have a crystal ball, and you have to make the decision by what you know today, what you feel today, and you should never regret that decision, because you don't have no way to know how would it go if you choose differently. So then all of us have to tolerate uncertainty, and that's maybe one of the things that life and work life puts us to go through.
Wow, that's very true. So yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, absolutely. Dave?
Yeah, I can't be as deep and meaningful as Sami just was, because his was a very good comment, I think. All I would say is don't react too quickly. So it's very similar to what Sami said in a way. We have a tendency to think that every message we get needs to be answered immediately, and every decision that's asked of us needs to be made quickly. They don't, and you don't need to reply super quickly. Think about things first. Take your time to reflect on what's best. Talk to people if you need to, but don't react too quickly. That's, the key thing, I think, especially in avoiding conflict as well.
Yeah, that's good. I have been told many times, be quick to listen and slow to speak. Yeah, very good. And yeah, I would really like to thank all of you on behalf of the entire ECS Fora for this great wealth of information and advice you have given us. It definitely will help us in our career, and also personally and professionally. It's fantastic to know all of this perspectives from you. So thank you very much. And we are actually super happy that you were able to be part of this event. Yeah, and I guess people will stick around to talk to you personally. Awesome. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in 10 minutes. Bye-bye.